Warning: this stream is rated for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Enigma Blockbuster Cinema Theater and the Arcade Nostalgia Memories podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC2. My right is the elegant, the very broadly genteel. I don't even know what words I'm just pulling shit out of my ass. Legion Cage, the one and only, also known as Rob, my co-host, my cohort, my co-partner in just about everything that is not relevant to anything whatsoever. And our special guest for this evening, a gamer that I met not too long ago, but well, probably say what 4 or 5 months or so through some various channels. Rageful Riot OG, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today, Rage?
Doing well, doing well.
Thank you. And Cage, my partner in crime, how are you this fine, lovely Sunday evening?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Getting in that Christmas spirit. Buy the best thing you could do at Christmas time: spend money.
Yeah. Either that or just like stealing children's gifts and throwing them in the garbage. That's always a good way to get into the Christmas spirit. At least that's what I've heard. I don't know. In any case, welcome everybody. So this is the final episode of RCADE for the 2021 year. When we go into, we're going to be taking a month off, and when we go into 2022, our next episode, episode 6, is going to be tentatively set for January 9th, which is also a Sunday. If you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, we want to encourage you to stop by the Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/EBC2021, where you can see the podcast being recorded live. And it also includes two things that you don't get on the audio version, which is, one, you get to watch the playthrough of the game that we are being presented with here on the RCADE podcast. You get to see the actual video with it, and Cage's fantastic hats that grace the center screen every episode. That in itself is totally worth the subscription, which is $0 at the moment. So come on by if you get a chance to watch the live broadcast where we record the podcast live, and then I go in the studio and chop up the audio and post it to the RSS feed, usually a couple days afterwards. So once again, thank you for joining us, either on the audio version or here live on Twitch, and good to see you. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Rage is going to be presenting to us a game from his childhood and many of ours. I've even played this game myself. That is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And this was, I believe, one of my brother's favorite games. I do remember watching him play it. I played some of it myself. I don't know if I ever actually beat it. Like, obviously there was, quite a few elements I remember from it, including the melodies that you had to play on the ocarina in order to solve some of the puzzles and advance the game, and some of the battle aspects of it, like obviously you had your sword, you had the bow and arrow. I remember more specifically, like, the training aspect of being on horseback while shooting targets. The horse is moving and shooting those targets with your bow and arrow, and some of the other gameplay elements that really made Zelda stand out as a newer format of game with the newer technology available on the N64. So last 2 weeks ago, we covered Star Fox 64, which had some of those same kind of things where, it was a newer technology Nintendo was putting out. They were, real excited to showcase all of the new things that you could do with a 64-bit system. And, there was a lot of things that had never kind of been seen in gameplay before. So we're going to discuss some of that with Zelda Ocarina of Time, because some of those things were very new at the time, and I'm sure they impacted a lot of different people, including our guest Rage, in many different ways, being such a new and exciting technology at the time, and the kind of impact that had on a lot of people's childhoods. So, Ocarina of Time came out in 1998. Cage is going to correct me if I got this wrong, but I think it's November 23rd. 21st. You know what it is that either I'm looking at, because I've been getting my information at least from Moby Games, and I don't know, maybe it's not quite that accurate. Maybe there's some other sites that are a little bit better, and I'm sure if Cage has been doing the research on that, he can share with us maybe where he gets some of that info. But in any case, 1998 and 64, 2007 came out on the Wii in Europe, 2015 on the Wii U worldwide, and then 2021 on the Switch. So right over to my co-host Cage. He's going to cover basically what was happening at the time when the game came out and how it was received.
Absolutely. Yeah. So honestly, Wikipedia. That's usually where I pull my date, and I pull the U.S. date for it, just because most everyone that we've had so far has been a member of the United States, and mostly the United States one is the one that I think a lot of places just kind of use. So when they're gauging things like that. But yeah, so let's take you back. It was Saturday, November 21st, 1998. So if you remember back then, Bill Clinton was president of the United States. Tony Blair was still the UK Prime Minister. If you turned on your radio in the US, you were probably listening to Lauryn Hill's Doo Wop That Thing, Divine's Lately, 98 Degrees is Because of You, Monica's The First Night, or Deborah Cox's Nobody's Supposed to Be Here. I'll be honest with you, I don't know any of those songs, but I probably didn't listen to the radio that much in 1998, so I was probably playing Legend of Zelda, honestly. In 1998, on November 21st, there were some famous birthdays happening. Actor, writer, Ghostbuster, and overall legend Harold Ramis was celebrating his 54th birthday. Actress Goldie Hawn celebrated her 53rd. Voice actor Sean Schimmel, better known as Goku in the American version of Dragon Ball Z, was celebrating his 30th birthday. And women's wrestlers and I believe WWE Hall of Famers Nikki and Brie Bella, the Bella twins, were celebrating their 15th birthday. You may have been playing Animaniacs 10 Pin Alley or maybe Clock Tower 2 on the PlayStation, possibly even Dragon Warrior Monsters on the Game Boy Color, as those were some really big games at the time. But if you were like most people, you were trying to get your hands on The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was the 5th game in the Legend of Zelda series and the first one to be in 3D. The game originally released on the N64 and received near perfect reviews from almost all major publications, with the game receiving a 99 out of 100 aggregate score on Metacritic. Edge, Electronic Gaming Monthly, Famitsu, GamePro, GameSpot, IGN, Next Generation, and RP Gamer all gave perfect scores, and Nintendo Power gave it a 9.5 out of 10, which is weird. I would anticipate them to be a little biased, but whatever. The game also received multiple Game of the Year awards from CESA, now known as the Japan Game Awards, Edge, EGM, GameSpot, Interactive Achievement Awards, Japanese Media Arts Festival, and other publications giving it Game of the Year. Ocarina has also received top honors as the greatest game of all time from Edge, Entertainment Weekly, Game Trailers, IGN, Metacritic, Nintendo Power, who gave it a poor score, or not a poor score, but not perfect, GameFAQs, Game Informer, Joystick, and multiple others. Those just being like the pinnacle awards. Ocarina of Time has also won awards for its music, its game design, best console game, story, many more things. This game, before it came out, over 500,000 people pre-ordered the game before it was released, awarding it for most advanced orders for a game from Guinness World Records. Over 1 million copies ended up being sold in the first week of release, ending with about 2.5 million before the end of the year. That's just basically a little over a month, putting it over $150 million in sales, just in the US. And that's equivalent to $240 million after inflation in 2020. It was obviously the best-selling game of 1998. Over its lifetime, it would go on to sell 7.6 million copies worldwide for the Nintendo 64, and that's not including its various re-releases, as Scotty also mentioned, coming out on the Wii and Wii U virtually, Switch virtually, and they also did actual physical retail releases for the GameCube in a collector's pack with its sequel, Majora's Mask, the original 2 Zelda games. And then in another pack with the previously unreleased Master Quest that was supposed to come out for the 64 disc drive that ended up being canceled, and then a physical version for the 3DS. Overall, obviously, a very, very heavy selling game and very influential in the world of games.
All right. So yeah, and honestly, just looking at it from like maybe a little bit of an outsider's perspective, I see a lot of streamers that will at least take a stab at this at one point or another. Now, I've only been on Twitch for about a year, and going through like the various games that I see streamers play, not only the new stuff coming out but the retro stuff. We just got raided in our live chat, and I'll thank Isnib for the raid. Because he was playing that on his own channel, and I've seen several other people in the past several months playing it as well. So yeah, it's definitely a good one. A lot of good memories, I'm sure that people have of it, because it was so good at the time, that a lot of people latched onto it. And I guess really that's the mark of a great game. Over time, to see just how many people latched onto it, not only in their childhood, but maybe discover it a little bit later. In any case, we're going to take a short little break here, and then come back for the first part of Rage's playthrough of Ocarina of Time. Again, welcome Raiders. Anybody else that's in the live chat, if you want to go ahead and put your questions there for Rage, and we will pose them to him as we're going through these playthroughs. Feel free, just type them in there, and we will ask your questions of our guest here on RCADE. So we'll take a short break and be back in just a little bit. All right, welcome back. So we're beginning our first part of the playthrough that Rage was doing with Ocarina of Time here. And once again, if you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, we do want to encourage you to stop by twitch.tv/EBC2021 to watch the live recordings of the podcast so that you can see these playthroughs. And if you miss it, obviously you're hearing this after the fact that it's been recorded. You can always go back on the channel and watch the video on demand, and see it that way, or at least see on the schedule when the next one is coming up, so you can be a part of that, be here in the chat to ask your questions and that. So again, very different from anything that had come before it. With the N64 system, brand new technology. We're seeing the 3D graphics for the first time. We're seeing some elements that had not been a part of gaming before. So why don't you start, Rage, by telling us about a little bit of the story, the gameplay, and the controls, and how to actually move through this now 3D environment.
Okay, yeah, so the story to the game is basically you're playing as Link, who is this kid who is who's been tasked to help defeat this evil that has taken over Hyrule. It starts out with you just been summoned by the Great Deku Tree, saying that he needs you to come and take care of something. You don't really know what, and you got to gather weaponry and stuff to be able to get over there. And then you go and have to fight evil across the world of Hyrule and the land of Hyrule, and try and stop Ganon from being able to take over and reign supreme with the evil. One of the things that I was kind of laughing as I was watching this talk about the controls is because the controls were kind of difficult to get used to. Again, but originally when they first came out, the camera followed where you were walking, but if you needed to change directions, you would hit the Z button on the bottom of the controller to be able to realign with where you're looking, and also use that to be able to actually connect or kind of zero in on a target. So you see the green arrow that was just popping up there, you can use that to look at people, to talk to them, or to target them if you're trying to attack them.
And that also,
and then the controller,
we were also going ahead and furthering the discussion from 2 weeks ago when we had Eddie with Star Fox 64, which was on the same platform, about the oddness of the N64 controller when it came out, and how, you know, it was very weird looking, and people didn't necessarily know how to take that.
I actually have it right behind me here. I can show that too, in case anybody hasn't seen it. So, if you hadn't seen the controller, this is the N64 controller, and it definitely was, at the time, easier to manage because she didn't have as much to what we have now with the Xbox and stuff like that. But the controller itself was a little bit wonky. The controls were a little bit to get used to because this was the first time I played a game where you had to actually set inventory onto your different buttons there. So like if you see the different arrow buttons there, you would go into your inventory to be able to select items that you can hotkey to those areas to be able to use them to either use like your slingshot, bomb, or anything like that to be able to blow open a door or whatever you needed to do. So it was to do the playthrough recently made it a little bit more challenging because I had to re-familiarize myself with the controls and things like that. And then for kind of progressing through the game here, there were different things you had to complete. So like here, we are in the process of trying to get a shield and a sword to be able to go to the Great Deku Tree because Mito is preventing you from getting there because he says that you're not who's supposed to be going there. You don't have a sword and shield. It's dangerous. You can't go in there. But then when you have it, you have to go to the Great Deku Tree, who lets you go in, and then each section has specific requirements of like weapons you might need and tools you might need to be able to do that. So here we were able to find the sword that you start out with to be able to get over there, and then you have to find the shield to be able to go and move on to the next part.
You kind of touched it already, and honestly, I was going to ask you if you had played through on the original hardware, which it looks like you did because you had the controller nearby there. We questioned in the chat. You kind of already touched this, but Short and Sweet 8402 asks, "What was your initial impression of the game the first time you played it? Like maybe like give us like the 1 or 2, 3 words that like went through your head most when you started."
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember when I first played this, I was basically looking at it in awe. Because, at the time, this was one of those, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Look at these graphics, they're awesome. This is so cool. This is such a great game. So it was definitely a lot of the whole just being like blown away with how great the graphics were at the time.
So now, once you do go ahead and get your sword and shield, you can go into the section with the Great Deku Tree. And that's spelled D-O-K-U? Right? Did I get that right?
Deku, D-E-K-U.
D-E, Deku.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm gonna fuck more of this up at some point here because, like I told you in the little meeting we had before prepping for the podcast here, it's been probably 20 years since I've touched this, maybe even longer, maybe 25. I mean, it came out in 98, so I was probably playing it right when it came out there, 98, 99. Same with my brother. And so I haven't touched it then, so probably 21 plus years since I've even got the ability to like control anything in this world and see how it operates. So it's a little bit hazy for me.
Yeah, that was the same feeling when I first, because prior to doing this playthrough, I had played it on stream. And I had to get reacquainted with the controls and everything, and remember all the names and pronunciations, and remember how to play the game, because prior to playing it on stream, I hadn't touched it in years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cage.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, how did you find, like, if you remember, going from a two, mainly 2D platform like NES, SNES to the newer 3D graphics on the 64.
It was something that I liked it at the time because I remember thinking, because I did used to play like the original Zelda that came out on NES before this. So when I played that and then switched over to this, I was just like blown away, like, oh, this is amazing. And I had to get used to actually having that ability to actually look around more than you were able on the NES, because you just had pretty much a screen right in front of you and you just went through that. So I had to kind of adjust to that, but it was definitely just mind-blowing to me, like, wow, look how far we've come in video games already. Just and oh no, how do I look over there?
So you kind of already mentioned playing the original before this one for the first time. Isnib from the chat asks, is this your favorite Zelda game?
Yes, out of all of them, this is my favorite Zelda game. I played like the original on the NES. I never played Zelda 2, and I played this one and then Majora's Mask. And out of the ones I did play, this was my favorite of them all.
Not playing Zelda 2 is probably a good way to like prevent yourself from some rage. That is for sure.
Yeah, from Legion Cage's playthrough of that on his channel, it doesn't look easy, and I've seen a couple other streamers doing it more recently, and yeah. Now, I never played any of the original ones, so I thought at one point I definitely did want to attempt the first one on original NES, and I don't know so much about the second one now, but at least the first one, I thought maybe would be a good one to try at least.
Yeah, the first one is, at least in my opinion, it is difficult. But the second one just ramps the difficulty up, like almost from the get-go, and then it just cranks it up to like 10. As Scotty, as you just said, I've watched a couple other people also play it recently. Beyond me and Short and Sweet playing through it together at the same time and struggling. And like one streamer in particular, Maleggio, he likes playing difficult retro games, and watching him struggle with it is like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So,
well, then I think it was, I think it was like either this morning or late last night. I was watching Saftresh play a little bit of Zelda 2, and he was just flying through it like it was nothing, spreading hot butter on toast. He was just boom, 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 right through it. It's like, okay. Clearly, he's got the level of skill that maybe a game like that requires.
Yeah. You also mentioned it. Isnib wants to know again, like asking all the questions. How does this one compare to Majora's Mask? Majora's Mask is a very touchy subject within the Zelda community, from what I've seen. A lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it for any various reasons. So, like, what are your thoughts on it?
And before you answer that, hold on 1 second. I want to go because I had thought about this before the podcast to bring this up, and I just did a list of all of the Zelda games in order. So first we had the original Legend of Zelda in '86, Zelda 2: Adventure of Link in '88. Then A Link to the Past on SNES in '92, Link's Awakening on Game Boy in '93, and then Game Boy Color Link's Awakening DX. So I'm assuming that's roughly the same, maybe a little bit different. 5 years later on Game Boy Color. Then Ocarina of Time in '98 and Majora's Mask in 2000, both on the N64. So go ahead. You were going to say, Rage?
So for me, I struggled with Majora's Mask. I did play it some. I played it shortly after it came out, and I struggled with the gameplay and figuring out how to play that one. So I'm not going to say it's a bad game. I haven't played it since then, so I still need to play it. I have it. I have the Majora's Mask. So at some point, I am going to play it. But I struggled really hard with Majora's Mask. I liked it. I liked the additions of like the Rumble Pack and stuff like that, and the fact that they had to add the extension. It made it feel like it was a very important game when you had to buy the extension or get the extension pack that came with it. That you had to plug into the N64 to be able to play Majora's Mask. But I struggled to figure out what I had to do to get started in that game. So once you get to the point where you have the countdown, I pretty much struggled and got frustrated and haven't touched it since.
So what you're saying is, if I was to go back and try to do my own run of Ocarina of Time, I should just stop there and not actually go into Majora's Mask.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but if it's something that you're not good with complicated games, that might be the case.
I'm not good with complicated
there's
games.
a lot of moving parts with. There's honestly a lot of moving parts within Majora's Mask because you have to not only deal with everything that Zelda throws at you in general, the puzzles, the enemies, the dungeons, then you have to tack onto it utilizing the Ocarina and having time travel put on top of it. Like it's daunting.
Is it worse or better than Zelda 2 on NES, in your opinion?
In overall, or just in terms of like being hard?
Both, you know, because look, I already decided by watching your guys' playthrough of Zelda 2 that I don't think I'm gonna attempt that anytime soon. Maybe in 2035 or something like that. But yeah, I'll definitely attempt the first one because that's a little bit more up my alley with the kind of the layout, and there's some RPG aspects to it, but I'm not a big RPG person at all, and I'm not so sure that I necessarily want to venture into that kind of thing,
That's absolutely fair. I mean, personally, I would say that Zelda 2 is definitely harder than Majora's Mask, but honestly, at the same time, infinitely better.
Yeah. And Rage, your opinion on that?
Well, I've never really dabbled with the Legend of Zelda 2 at all, so I never actually played that one. But I will say, like, from playing the game, it was like Majora's Mask was just frustrating for me at the time, just because I couldn't figure out the mechanics. But the mechanics of the game were fantastic. Like Majora's Mask was great. I just got frustrated with the game myself, and then kind of backed out of it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So, we've covered most of the gameplay, the controls, the story, and can you tell us a little bit more about, like, right now you've got the slingshot, which obviously that's a little bit different from like the bow and arrow. Can you tell us more about like some of the weapons and the items that you collect along the way, and how that affects the gameplay?
Yeah, for sure. So there are actually two sets of weapons that you can get. So when playing Ocarina of Time, you have a segment where you're a kid. I mean, technically you're a kid on both segments, but then the second part of the game is when you are an older kid, because realistically he's like a teenager on the second part of the game. So in the first part, you have like the slingshot. You can get a boomerang. You eventually get a bomb pouch, and that's one of the things that you're able to actually kind of take with you to the older version of Link. But like the slingshot, the old shield, the old sword, you can't take with you. You have to have like the Master Sword, the Hyrulean shield. You have to upgrade some of the stuff because like the slingshot is kind of like the kid version of the bow, where when you go to the second part, when you start going into like through the Temple of Time, when you go through that section, you grow up and then you get like the bow, you get the better shield, you get what's called a hook shot, where you're able to grab items or grab onto things and kind of transport yourself across different gaps and stuff like that. You also get different types of arrows as well. You can go through and get like a fire arrow, a light arrow, and a freezing arrow, I believe is the third one. You get 3 different ones that you have to use throughout the game for different types of enemies, different types of things that you have to, like different puzzles that you might have to use them for as well. And then there is also the infamous Big Round Sword, which you can get in the game, which is something you have to go through. It's about an hour's worth of things that you have to go through, different obstacles. You got to get different items. You have to go through different steps to get to each segment under a certain amount of times. Like I think like usually like a minute and a half to 3 minutes tops, before you're able to get the Big Round Sword. And any step of the way through it, if you mess up, you have to start all over again. So that's and that weapon is useful because it's a much bigger weapon, doesn't break, and is pretty good at taking out enemies faster, and helps in the end game when you have to fight Ganon at the end.
You know, so you were kind of talking about the various items that you get between being a kid and an adult. In the chat, Tubaswan wants to know 2 different things. 1, what is your favorite item in the game? And 2, what is your favorite puzzle within the game that utilizes one of the special items? Obviously, a lot of the puzzles within Zelda, they give you the item for a reason to complete that temple. Yeah. So yeah, favorite item, favorite puzzle that utilizes an item. And it doesn't have to be the same item for both. So.
Right. Well, actually, it kind of works out because one of my favorite items was the Lens of Truth. Because using the Lens of Truth gives you access to see things that might not be there. So doorways, possible enemies. And honestly, going through and finding that was... You find that and then go and be able to leave, because you have to use the Lens of Truth to see different entrances and stuff, things like that. And one of the puzzles that I enjoyed was just using that to first just go through the Spirit Temple later on in the game, closer to the end of the game, because there's a lot of segments in there where you have to go through and use the lens to find entrances or find like any of the chests that some of the chests are hiding and you can't see them unless you have the Lens of Truth on. So basically anything that involved the Lens of Truth was actually stuff that I enjoyed, because it added that element of, oh, hey, let me try this and see if I can find that.
And
a really unique answer. Like most people, I would feel like would be the hook shot or the slingshot or something. You know, something designed to kill enemies.
Right.
You know, that's very unique. I like it.
Sorry, no, you're fine. We have if you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, we have a little bit of a delay between the Discord audio and what I'm actually putting out for our live stream. So that's why occasionally we talk over each other. It's because, that delay comes into play, and, there's not much we can do about it. So, but what I was going to say is it doesn't have anything to do with the special item aside from the actual Ocarina itself. But I will always remember the cemetery scene where you're walking up into the cemetery it starts getting darker, and I think there's a little bit of storm sounds, and the music gets ominous, and you pull right up to in front of the main tombstone and play your song, and then the lightning crashes down and breaks the tomb apart. That is a fantastic scene, in my opinion, and will be almost indelibly seared into my memory for a long time to come. Even though I only played this, part time 20 plus years ago, that to me was a absolutely fantastic use of the elements they had at their disposal to create something great. Not only the scene itself and how it played out, but the music that was involved. The theme that you play on the ocarina to make that happen. And I probably should have recognized at the time, but the meaning behind, I think, part of that is that I really should have gotten into horror games a lot earlier than I ever did, because that was just fantastically morbid and awesome. I'm sure anybody else that's played this game can remember that and look back fondly on it.
For sure, for sure.
So looking at the other questions I'm getting from chat for your age, Star Road Gaming Cafe wants to know what's your favorite temple and least favorite temple.
Well, I will start with least favorite first. Least favorite was the water temple. It was the one temple that gave me the most trouble, and when you had to fight your shadow self, basically, I always struggled, and it was the most frustrating part for me in this game was to fight the Shadow Link in the water temple. My favorite temple, I don't know if I really ever thought about that one. I'm trying to think of all of them. I mean, one of my favorites, I guess, was originally the Forest Temple, when you go for the first medallion, because that temple, it's fun encountering the different Poe that you have to encounter to unlock the different areas to be able to finally get to the final boss fight.
Nice, and that final boss fight in the Forest Temple with the Phantom Ganon. Before we started today, I did watch actually Iznib completed the Forest Temple on his stream, and that fight with Phantom Ganon is very entertaining.
Yes, I had to, when I was streaming this last, had to ask for some help because I couldn't remember how to take care of him. But it is an interesting one, and definitely kind of makes you kind of think outside the box a little bit.
For sure, for sure. Tubaswan wants to know, did you play the re-releases on the GameCube and GameCube or 3DS? If so, did you like any of the changes they made? If not, what holds you back from attempting them?
I have not. I've never did anything with any of the re-releases, and nothing's really holding me back. I just never thought of it. I didn't realize there were re-releases. I just happened to one day, my mom reminded me that they had the N64 and got it, so I was like, "Oh, hey, let's play Zelda again." So I just haven't done it. I just didn't think about it or anything. So nothing really holding me back from getting the re-releases.
Right. And that's not a big thing. I mean, they made some minor changes. I think the biggest change with those particular re-releases was the addition of the Master Quest to them. So,
yeah, I had seen some of the Master Quest stuff, and I thought that was interesting.
All right, so we're coming up to pretty soon here the end of the first part of the playthrough. Is Goma? Did I see that right on the screen? Gohma. That's the name of this boss. Now that you're fighting.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about now the gameplay when you're having to face this boss?
So, in regards to fighting this boss, it's all about you have to hit her eye whenever it's exposed. And once you hit it, you have to hit it with something, as you saw there, either with one of the Deku seeds, Deku nuts, or or hitting with the bow, not bow, slingshot. And then you have to actually hit her eye when she's stunned, and then when she's stunned, after you hit her, she'll go back up, and then it's good to try to keep track of her, because then you know where she's going to drop next. But then she drops, as you see here, the little spawn there that you have to fight. I don't remember the name of them off the top of my head right now. But then when she comes back down, it's good to aim at her using the Z button to lock onto her eye, and then hit her, and then just rinse, wash, and repeat until you finally take her out. Which, as you see, you can also see there, when she isn't trying to attack at you, she's able to prevent you from hitting her in the eye until then. When she rears back to attack, then you can hit her with the slingshot, and then proceed to hit the eye.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed about some of the other boss fights, watching Short and Sweet play Zelda 1, and then, of course, the various other people playing Zelda 2 over the last couple of weeks. The boss always seems to have, a few very short seconds or 1 second of vulnerability, at which that's the point you have to strike them, because otherwise it's going to be ineffective or not effective enough to actually do damage, unless you want to spend the next 30 minutes fighting them. So
right,
it seemed like that's kind of a recurring theme in these, and maybe other RPGs like that, is not you have to learn over time those vulnerabilities to exploit them.
Yeah, and there's also, I know in this one particularly, you have the ability to, when you lock onto an enemy, you're able to interact with Navi, who then can tell you if she knows it, tell you the weakness. I didn't do it here because I remembered how to beat it, but I believe when you press, there's the up arrow on the controller. When you press that, Navi will interact and tell you, and I think it tells you to go for the eyeball. And the eye on this one, as you get further, the hints get less and less useful, and it gives you more riddles on what you can do to be able to hit them.
Yeah, probably because at that point they're expecting you to actually play the game and figure shit out on your own. Use some of that
Right,
gamer
exactly.
skill there. All right, so that's the end of the first part of the playthrough. We're going to take a short commercial break and come back for the second part of the playthrough. Once again, if you're in our live chat, please go ahead and post your questions for our guest Rage, who is presenting The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and we will go ahead and ask him and get those questions answered. In the second part of the playthrough, we're going to be covering more of the memories that Rage has surrounding this game in particular, and the kind of impact and influence it had on his life. So stick with us. We'll be right back after this short break. All right, coming back now for the second half of Rage's playthrough of Ocarina of Time. So yeah, from my end of things, like I said, over 20 years ago is when I last played this, but I still remember things like that cemetery scene very vividly, but maybe not quite as exact. Once I see that scene again, I'm gonna go, oh, I don't quite remember it this way, or things like that, because of the cobwebs that have gathered inside my brain. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about the memories surrounding this? Why is it so nostalgic for you?
So the nostalgia for me was it was one of the games that I watched my older brother play, and watched him beat the game. And I was kind of playing on my own as well a little bit, but it was one of those where I watched him beat the game, and of course, as we all know, with the N64 games, it saves all that data and everything that you've done. So once you beat the game, it's all saved there. So I would kind of go through and try to play the game behind him and be like, all right, I want to play the end of this game because I can't get here by myself right now. And I would go through and kind of play his copy of it. And then one day he saw me doing that. He's like, no, you got to do this yourself. So he went in and deleted his save file. So I had to do it by myself. He said, if you can't play this game on your own without any help, then you might not need to play it. And it kind of sparked a fire, and then I went through and beat the game by my own. So, just going, and it was also just one of those games where it was kind of I had played Super Mario before playing this. Then I played Ocarina of Time, and just playing Ocarina of Time was, I may have had this backwards. I could have the dates on those wrong. I feel like I played that first, but Ocarina of Time was one of those where it was just really cool. I was enjoying it. I was more in the adventure kind of games and stuff like that at the time. So I really just, it was something that really stood out to me because the story was awesome. The gameplay was really, great for the time. Even now it's still great gameplay. The controls are a little bit wonky if you're playing it from the N64, but it's just one of those games that I enjoyed playing. When I played it and remembered it, it was just the one game that stood out because the story was great, the gameplay was unique, it was a lot of fun, and it was challenging, but in a good way.
Now, you were talking about that save state. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but SNES started that where you're able to save the game because I saw, I the only consoles I have is an old NES and an SNES, and obviously, unless you have. I don't think you had that kind of capability with a Game Genie on NES, but on SNES, that's when they introduced these save states where you can, save it and go back in, longer games that required a lot more playthrough and, the ability to start where you left off. And correct me if I'm wrong, the N64 used to have, because if you look in the bottom of the controller, there's another port there that you can plug it in, and obviously that was mostly for like things the Rumble Pack. But wasn't there a larger memory card that you could plug into that port to save various game states on?
That I don't remember. I am not sure. I know the most I had was the Rumble Pack myself, and then of course the expansion of the RAM, the card that went into the N64 for being able to play games like Ocarina of Time, not Ocarina of Time, but playing games like Majora's Mask, because it required more RAM than the N64 had. I don't know about anything that extended memory, or not memory, but storage at all. I don't remember.
The N64, you could get memory cards for them. It was mainly just like, it would be like the idea of like, okay, we're all going to Rage's house, right? And dude, I want to show you my file on Zelda and be able to show you how I, did this or this new thing I got. So I could put my save file on the memory card, take it over, put my memory card in your controller, and boot that up on your system, just like any other memory card that we've come to know. It was kind of honestly, it seemed like kind of a useless feature for the N64 because I could literally just take my cartridge to your house and show you that way too. But there were other uses for it, like with various other games, like taking created characters or things like that as well. There was advantages to it, just most people did not use them because they just saved it directly on the cartridge. And yeah, Coptimus Crime in our chat, Scotty, yeah, you could actually, there were games on the original NES that had the ability to save them. The original Zelda, Zelda 2, Final Fantasy, most of them actually gave you a warning and said, please press reset before you press the power button. For whatever reason, it had something to do with getting the save file to like stick. So, but yeah, there were games you could save on the NES.
Okay, see, that's where my knowledge failed me a little bit because I didn't know if that was like something that came out with SNES, and the technology that's involved with like some of the cartridges. I mean, so at least on an NES, it seemed like there was nothing necessarily built into the actual console. It was something that was primarily saved on the cartridge, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit new to me. How that was done, because I know we also ran into something a little bit not too long ago. One of our streamers was playing an emulator version of Silent Hill, and ran into a problem where the actual save state within the game didn't work because there was some kind of glitch with the emulator, and he actually had to continue to do the save state with the emulator program itself. So I don't know if that comes into play somehow, but the save states on some of the games seemed like it was an evolving technology in its own that had to get better with the various newer consoles as they came out.
Yeah, for sure. And Scotty, that's not your knowledge, or information failing you. That's why you have a really nerdy co-host.
You are here because you are the expert in gaming, the best one I could find as far as knowledge of games and that. If you're not familiar, my co-host Legion is the former general manager of a popular video game store that will remain nameless because we don't want to get sued. And he was there for quite some time and knew a lot of the ins and outs of the gaming industry and sales and things that were available along the line, not only the games themselves but the consoles, the attachments and that. So while we're discussing that, I will go ahead and request, if you are listening to the audio version of the podcast, not only check out our channel where we do the live recording of the podcast, EBC 2021, but also check out my co-host channel, twitch.tv/Legion Cage, spelled LEGIONKAJE. And our guest today is RagefulRiotOG. He's at twitch.tv/RagefulRiotOG. And I spell it out just in case you're listening and you want to check this out. That's how you can type them in and find them real quick to check out our individual channels on Twitch and see how these games are played and some of the things that we present aside from the podcast itself. But yeah, so we actually had a cutscene here in the game when we came back for the playthrough, talking about the a little bit of the history behind the Triforce. Did that
Yeah, so right.
Sorry, that delay's coming into play here. Did that have any have any effect on how you were looking at this game as a youth? Some of the backstory in that.
Oh yeah, the backstory was some of the cool stuff that some of the stuff that kind of drew me to this game. Just like learning about the cutscenes. I mean, like I said at the time, obviously the graphics were like amazing for what they were. So it was just seeing like the draw, like the story and how they kind of presented it, and like how it like the three different forces came together to create Hyrule and the world they live in, and just the story behind it, and understanding that, hey, if somebody bad gets all three parts of the Triforce, they can plunge the world in darkness. It was really awesome to see this, like the lore, the story behind it, and how like it's like, okay, well, I really need to make sure I don't let Ganon get this because that would be bad.
Yeah, I think this was the first one where they kind of dove really into the idea of what the Triforce was. Like, you knew it was a great power within the world from the first couple games there, but you didn't didn't really tell you much about it overall. And this is they kind of touched on it in Link to the Past, I would say. And they talked about the Sacred Realm being the place where the Triforce is hidden and that kind of stuff. But like this is the first time I think where they really talk about the three goddesses like creating the world.
And how does Ganon come into play? Because he's the villain also in the first one and the second one for NES, is he not? I'm not that familiar with how that story goes, but I seem to recall him being a part of the previous games as well.
Well, I don't remember honestly how I went through and I was able to complete the first one, but I don't remember much about the actual story behind it. I know in this one, which was later in the playthrough of what I did here, was you go in and you meet with Princess Zelda, and then she kind of gives you the same story about the Triforce, and the power behind it, and why it can't fall in the wrong hands, and then you're introduced to Ganondorf at the time, and when he's in the castle, and you peek in, and then he sees you in the window while you're standing there. So that's when they kind of go into that information, and then you're told that, hey, you need to go get the other two Spirit Stones so that you can get to the Sacred Realm and prevent this from happening.
Yeah, and Scotty, to your point there with it, Ganon is kind of that central villain of the Zelda games for sure. He was the focal point in the first game, even though they didn't really give you a ton of information unless you looked in the actual instruction booklet. But he's depicted as like this dark wizard that's like in the form of like a pig, kind of, and that's how you find him in the first game.
Interesting.
When you see him, he's actually not in Zelda 2 at all. Zelda 2 is all about preventing the return of Ganon. And is one of the few Zelda games that have the first one or the second one is supposed to be a direct sequel of the first one, even though the world is completely different looking. He comes back in Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, and again is depicted as like this evil wizard that kind of is in the form of like this pig, like this boar-looking pig creature. Ocarina of Time is actually the first time where you get some backstory about Ganon and actually see him in the form of a man. Ganon is kind of given this legend backstory that there's a race called the Gerudo, something like that in Zelda lore, and they are all women. It's an all-woman race. But once every X amount of years, one of them will give birth to a man. And as the legend of the hero of time, that man would be bore up to become like a great evil, essentially.
Interesting.
So, and that's where you get kind of like this backstory about Ganon in this game, is that he was that one male Gerudo that was born to them, and he becomes the big bad. Yeah, one male born every 1,000 or 10,000 years. Thank you, Star Wars Gaming Cafe.
Interesting. So let me ask you this, Riot. This has become my favorite question to ask over the past several episodes that we've done here, and that is, like when you hit certain parts of the game, like right now, we're speaking to an upside down owl, and other parts, like for instance, I had brought up earlier that cemetery scene that's always going to be seared into my mind. are there any specific parts to the game where you come across the scene, and obviously you said it's been a while since you played it before doing this on your stream and on the playthrough, but you know, you come across the scene and all of a sudden this memory flashes in your head because it was such a powerful thing that it invokes that memory from your past. Do you have anything like that in relation to this game where you just hit that spot in the game and boom, you're instantly transported back to relive that memory again?
I mean, largely those kind of moments were more just like in the game itself. Um, some of them being like when a lot of going back into just any of the temples, really, especially the first few, because I remember struggling through some of them, so I kind of don't remember some of the temples prior to playing it again recently. And it was just like, I mean, kind of this part, just remembering, okay, that's right. I know how to get around here. I know what I need to do to get around here to get to the castle. Or just that reminder of like, oh yeah, I remember this part. I remember feeling like, oh my god, this is actually happening. A lot of that being like some of the stuff that happens later in the game when you're the adult Link and you are revisiting. I can't remember the name of the village. It's leading up to the mountain of or Death Mountain or the volcano. When you go into the village there and later in the game and something like everything just like seems dark and everything, dark, or the volcano seems to be active, and you realize, oh, I have to go up there. I have to go up there and take care of that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, and also just that this scene in the cemetery with the when you get into the the Hyrule Royal Crypt to go and take care of that stuff. Just remembering some of those moments in the game, and just right before coming up to him, like, oh yeah, this is when this happens. This is gonna be so cool to watch. Watch it again now, so many years later.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it as well. Not necessarily like something that happened outside of the game, but you know, things that are happening in the game. If you haven't seen it for a while, like you said, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen next, and you remember, you know, why that holds such value to you because it was things that you remember fondly over the years. See, even now, just watching this, you go into the Hyrule Castle, or you know, attempting to get in there. I remember seeing some of that sneaking around, and you know, I haven't seen this, despite some of our streamer friends actually playing it recently. I haven't seen this in 20 years, but I now remember it. You know, so yeah, I think a lot of those in game elements could be just as big of a happy memory surrounding the game as events outside of it. Like, you know, we've had some of our guests in the past talk about how you know, it related to their family specifically, you know, spending, you know, a certain amount of time playing the game with their parents or siblings or friends, or you know, in one case we had one of our guests talking about how you know, she had a time limit on the amount of time she could play the game, uh, because there was a password placed on her console by her father, and she happened to guess on the first try the right password, and you know, never said a damn word about it, but you know, was able to then, you know, use that. And you know, those kinds of external memories are maybe just as good as the internal ones where we're looking at parts of the game and going, oh yeah, this was great, you know.
Yeah, and I just remembered another one of those memories that I remember. And I don't know if anybody from my stream that day is in here right now, but I remember when I was in the water temple. On stream, I remember getting to a point, I'm like, oh no, I know it's behind this door. Guys, I don't want to go in this door. I know it's behind this door. It was the fight with your shadow self. I knew for a fact. I was like, this is it. This is the door I don't want to go through, because I go through this door, I'm going to be frustrated. And then
Um,
somebody pointed out to me a way to beat him quickly. So
yeah. Well, and at that point, especially games that I haven't played before or haven't played in a long time, I'm not opposed, at least personally, to looking up a guide to advancing through the game. I started recently looking at Castlevania 2, and right from the get go, I never played that before, and right from the get go, I wanted to look up a guide to help me figure out where everything is, simply because I don't want to spend a couple thousand hours figuring all that shit out.
right.
So, did we have any more questions from the chat cage?
Yeah, we do actually. I got a couple of them on deck here. So Star Road Game Cafe wants to know, have you well, let me ask you, Rage, are you familiar with like ROM hacks?
Kind of. I believe basically just the use of ROMs to emulate the games, right? Or am
Kind
I?
of. Basically, someone would actually take it would be someone taking the game data and actually like altering it and changing it to do certain things. Sometimes just quality of life improvements. Sometimes it's like making their own. In for Zelda, it would be making their own master quest. Randomizers are a popular type of ROM hack.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm gonna guess that you have not played any
No.
ROM hack versions of this game. Would
No.
would that be something that you would consider doing? Playing like a new quest or a randomizer, or where you get, you know, Luke's lightsaber from Star Wars instead of the Master Sword, or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one of the things I noticed were the people doing the randomizer, and that was something that I was like, I might do that. I would love to do something like that. I don't have something for that right now, but I would love to.
Um, So we talked in the first part there a little bit about like the items within the world of Ocarina of Time, right? Um, Tubaswan wants to know, what is your opinion of Zelda's continued use of musical instruments to enhance the gameplay? Items like the ocarina, the flute, the drums in Majora's Mask, the pan flute and spirits tracks, things like that. And do you think the capabilities of using instruments as items to enhance the gameplay peaked in Ocarina of Time?
So, I like the idea of the supplement of using the different instruments and the different music, the different songs to make changes to the game in whatever way, whether it be revealing something, changing the weather, changing what time of day it is. Um, I like the idea, and I don't know enough about any of the games past Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to know how well they played out. I know in Ocarina of Time it was handled really well. I like the way it was used, and it was something that I had to play some of the more recent ones to see what it looks like. But I feel like it was a good addition, and I feel like it could easily be translated well to the other games with other instruments as well. So I feel like did they hit the peak here? I wouldn't really know, but I feel like they could easily have expanded upon it and made it even better. It was well done to begin with, though, so I wouldn't know since I haven't played any of the other games.
That's fine. And that's fine. So you've you, you've never played anything past Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, then?
That is correct.
Have you thought about going and playing any of the newer ones? Like, I don't know if you own a Nintendo Switch, like playing Breath of the Wild, because that one obviously is very insanely popular.
Right. Oh yeah, no, for sure. My fiance and I actually were just talking about not too long ago about the new Zelda games. I'm like, I for a while there, I had just Nintendo never was on my radar for a while. Again, I just kind of forgot about them because I was on like Xbox and PlayStation mode. And then my son got a Switch, and then I got a Switch for us. And then I just kind of like, oh, that came back like, oh yeah, they have all kinds of Zelda games I never played before because I didn't touch anything after that. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be at some point in diving into some of the newer games and learning about them and playing them, and then making the comparisons and and the Legend of Zelda games were something that was always fun for me. I just forgot about them for a while, and now I'm like, okay, let's get back into this.
Nice. Would you say if you had to choose one game in the Zelda series right now that you would play tomorrow if you had time, access, whole 9 yards, whatever, what would be the Zelda game you would play tomorrow?
Honestly, right now it would be Breath of the Wild. I've seen some playthrough and it makes me want to play it.
Do you have a Switch, Rage?
Yes.
Okay, and the only reason I ask is because, so looking back down through my list of all the Zelda games, the last one that came out just recently was Skyward Sword on the Switch. Have you played that yet?
No, I have not. The furthest I've gone was Majora's Mask, and then of course revisiting Ocarina of Time on the actual N64 itself. So I haven't gone anything beyond that.
Yeah, or I'm sorry, Skyward Sword HD, the redo, because the original Skyward Sword came out on 2011 on the Wii. I've seen several of the other streamers in our community doing Skyward Sword HD. Is that something that you're going to be looking forward to playing here pretty soon? Potentially getting that?
Oh, yeah. I plan on getting some of the more recent ones at some point and playing them because, like I said, Legend of Zelda, just in general, was my go-to to everything because I love the Legend of Zelda games.
Right. All right. We only have a few minutes left here in our second part of the playthrough. Any final questions that you want to put up in our live chat? Please go ahead and do so now. And is there anything else that you wanted to share with us, Rage, in this last little bit? Things that really struck you about Ocarina of Time, especially as you were going back through it for the playthrough and that?
I mean, honestly, the big thing that struck me when I came back to play it again was just how well made the game was. Going from just through all the different temples, all the different puzzles, and all the and then the final fight at the end of the game, which is like a 3-part fight. It was just interesting to me how well made this game was for the time it came out. And then, of course, I did have the funny thought to myself when I was playing this before of the fact that I find it quite interesting that Ganon left all of these things for Link to get while he was, able to take over Hyrule at the time, just to be defeated and surprised that he was defeated by Link with all the tools that he left in all the temples, thinking he wouldn't get them.
Sounds like a classic bad villain move.
Right, exactly.
Well, and it seems like, in general, this game was just complicated enough to give you that standard of excellence as far as gameplay goes. You're not going to beat it in a day, especially not getting it firsthand, but, maybe within a week or two, you're putting in the time to learn what you need to learn and solve all the puzzles, and it gives you a good gameplay experience for the amount of money you spent at the time to actually play it. And
oh yeah, for sure.
Maybe that in itself is the mark of a good game, is how much gameplay and time spent do you actually get for your value. Not only the nostalgic aspects of it, maybe you played Zelda 1, Zelda 2, the stuff on SNES and Game Boy, and then all of a sudden now you have a 64 and this comes out and you're like, oh, I gotta play that Zelda game, But,
Yeah.
The actual gameplay experience, furthering of the story, more of the background, like they did here, with the three of them, creating the universe and, or at least a world, and creating the Triforce, that it was an integral part of the story, but you didn't necessarily know that kind of stuff before. and especially if you're into the lore, getting that kind of backstory stuff that really fleshes it out.
Yeah, definitely. I agree because anymore, a lot of the newer games either have obscenely high learning curves or have just not enough time or content where you can beat it in a short period of time, which is good for some things, but in other times, it's just the older games are always going to be better in that regard, in my opinion, just because they put in the right amount of difficulty, right amount of learning curve, and gave you enough information and enough playthrough time that it was something that you looked forward to playing it because you didn't want to put the controller down, but you knew you had to.
Yeah. Okay, well that's pretty much all we have for you in the regards with the playthrough here. So, one of the things that I have really liked, we've done 5 episodes now of the podcast, is being able to watch these playthroughs and saying, okay, here's a visual representation of the aspects that we're discussing about the game. It's one thing to just say, hey, you got to check this part out, but to actually see it on the screen how it plays out, that is something I'm glad I tried to put in here as part of the podcast. Not only the audio experience, obviously you can hear some of the playthrough quiet in the background, but as we're doing the live broadcast on Twitch, being able to show parts of this, like we did, the DLC content with Borderlands 2 and the Joho a couple of weeks ago, and stuff that you may not necessarily see because of exclusivity, or it wasn't a game that you had access to, or things like that. So this was a real treat for me, watching some of the video playthrough, as it has been, a lot of our streamer friends over the last several weeks that have chosen to play that. So once again, if you would like to check out our guest, he is RagefulRiotOG on Twitch. Pretty much exactly how it sounds, RagefulRiotOG. I'm not going to spell it again for you, but you can check that out. And is your recent playthrough of Ocarina of Time still in your video on demand section, Rage?
It is not. It has been more than the allotted time.
It expired. That's one of the things that I found out quite soon about Twitch after I lost several programs in the beginning from my channel, is Twitch does allow you to download the programs from your channel, from your production manager. And somebody I remember had a channel, I don't know, several months ago, mentioned it. He said, yeah, I just downloaded from Twitch and re-upload it because then it's there forever. And I'm like, oh, way to figure things out, without Twitch just deleting it summarily and like, where did it go? And then, of course, now I use OBS, Open Broadcast Software, Studio to broadcast to Twitch for me, and it's got its own recording function, so I do have everything in my archive that actually will be available soon on our Patreon, that we're announcing soon here on the EBC channel. But you can, at the very least, check out RagefulRiotOG on Twitch and see some of his gameplay. He plays a lot of Dead by Daylight. And what other games are in your main repertoire, Rage?
Mainly Dead by Daylight, Phasmophobia, introduced some Hunt Showdown, and Tribes of Midgard.
Awesome. And at the very least, as if Legion Cage's hats were not enough of a draw, you definitely have to check out the video on demand for this podcast on my Twitch, if for nothing else to see the wings that appear to be sprouting out of Rage's head on his webcam because of his background. It is a fabulous sight to behold. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Once again, this is the Arcade Nostalgia Memories podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. My co-host, Legion Cage, also known as Rob. And our special guest this evening has been Rageful Riot OG, presenting The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So I want to go ahead and close this out. If you have not done so, once again, please check our live broadcast of the podcast on twitch.tv/EBC2021. I also want to take 1 minute before we close out the podcast here to advertise an upcoming special that will be exclusively on Twitch. This will not be on your audio podcast, and that is an original audio drama called Christmas Insanity that will be premiering on EBC 2021 on Sunday, December 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a great program. We want to encourage everybody, even though you may be listening to the podcast because you're into gaming, this is something very different from gaming. It is semi-related to it, but it's going to be a very fun time, hopefully very entertaining, and if you have a flair for the dramatic, I do want to encourage you to stop by and check that out. Once again, that is Christmas Insanity, an original audio drama by the Enigma Blockbuster Cinema Production Company, and that will be premiering Sunday, December 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on ABC. So, once again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you after the new year, December 9th again, or I'm sorry, January 9th again, I think is our new episode 6 into 2022. So we're taking a month off here throughout the holidays, and we'll see you next year. So once again, thank you for joining us, and see you later. Good night. All right, for those of you still here with us on Twitch, thank you for joining us once again. Thanks, Isnib, for the raid. I really appreciate you. Let's go over to coming attractions right now. Tomorrow night, The Amazing Mr. X, our first film noir. It's an excellent drama from 1948. Very good, how shall I say, it's a plot line that I never expected. I watched the movie, for the first time myself last week, and lots of twists and turns in the plot. I was very much surprised and entertained by this movie, which actually has gone by a couple of different names, but most popularly known by The Amazing Mr. X. And I also, I didn't make a promo for it, but I did want to talk to you about Public Domain Movie Night next week, which is on the 13th, I think. It's just a week from Monday, but we're going to be showing Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1972, a great Christmas horror flick that's really, really bad. And that's part of the reason why the license was not renewed a couple of years ago. So it is in the public domain, but a nice Christmas-themed horror coming the week after this. So that is The Amazing Mr. X tomorrow night, and Silent Night, Deadly Night next Monday. Cage, you wanted to say something? Yeah. And It is. It's horrible, and I love it because it's so horrible. But that's the great thing about public domain movies, is that there's quite a few. You know, I've done a lot of research now on the legal aspects of what public domain entails, and there's various things coming into play. So it could be something that was made much more recently, but what it has to do is with the legalities of who actually owns the movie. And if they don't follow the law themselves, or they decide not to renew their license, things like that, it falls into the public domain. So this is obviously older, 1948 for The Amazing Mr. X, but yeah, there will be some times during public domain movie night when we are looking at some films that are much newer, including Silent Night, Deadly Night, which was made in '72. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm going to try to change it up every so often. Then Thursday, December 9th, next week, I'm going to be doing one of my few gaming shows. We're going to take on Chip's Challenge, the old DOS game, because that is one of the things that I played when I was a kid, when we had one of those Windows 95 PCs or whatever the hell it was that we were playing on. I can't even remember, and I don't know if Joel was old enough to remember that. But this was one that I remember playing, and I got it on Steam. It's free on Steam. So I downloaded it and started playing. A lot of good memories came back for me. So that'll be on Thursday, December 9th. Then coming up the next day on Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. in the morning if you're on the West Coast. Get your coffee for Cage's Soul Link Challenge, where he will be killing Stephanie in the first 5 minutes or so, I expect, without fail. I don't know why either of them agreed to this apparently disastrous coupling of their Pokemon in Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Is that the full name of the game? Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, or? Ah, gotcha. No, I didn't know that because I'm not a gamer. I do recall something along the lines of the Pokemon Red, the green leaf, and red something else, right? That's the one, the older one you guys have been playing. Leaf green. Gotcha. So, hold on. That's because I'm supposed to be doing something here, and yeah. There we go. There he is. Okay, so repeat everything you just said the last time. No, he was just talking about there being two versions of Pokemon when they released. So this time we have Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, or the two separate games, and yeah, Cage is going to kill Steph in at least 5 minutes, if not sooner. Anyone want to take bets on that? We're going to be taking, the over/under on that is Cage kills Steph's Pokemon in, I think, 1-to-1 is the.
No, see, we already talked about this. I believe we're kind of in agreement. Steph believes that she will draw first blood, but I will draw most blood.
Ah, there we go. So anyway, if you're going to be up for that, get your coffee ready because it's early in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 a.m. on the West Coast, for the Soul Link Challenge that begins this coming Friday, December 10th, on Legion Cage's channel, which it's linked down in the bottom there if you don't know how to spell his name. It is not, contrary to popular beliefs, pronounced Kage. It is Legion Cage. Get it right, fuckers. Anyway, the last thing I have to show you is Christmas Insanity! Oh my god, I'm going insane from all the insanity. Christmas Insanity, the next audio drama from the Enigma Blockbuster Cinema Theater, is going to be premiering here December 19th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you that are beautiful people and you've been in the chat here all along, or you're just joining us, you came in with Isnib's raid, I will tell you right now that's listening to this that the details, or at least some of the details, on Christmas Insanity will be released tomorrow on the Discords. So you want to be looking for that tomorrow. We will be releasing some more details about the next audio drama here on EBC. And man, we're having a blast putting this together. You're not going to want to miss it. Mark it on your calendars now, December 19th, 2021. We're going to be announcing a lot of different things that night as well, including you will have then access to the new Patreon for EBC. And a couple of the things that are coming down the pipeline for Discord. So make sure you mark it on your calendars. Hope to see you there December 19th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Christmas Insanity. So once again, from the Enigma Blockbuster Cinema Theater, I am Scotty, and I really appreciate you coming down here. Let's give it up for our special guest this evening, RagefulRiotOG. Go check him out. Cage is going to put him in the chat now. A shout out for him. Go check out Rage's playthroughs of Dead by Daylight. They are absolutely a scream to die for. Great playthroughs there. And I love watching him play Dead by Daylight. It's great fun. And of course, Legion Cage, the guy in the middle with the furry head. He has been doing a couple of different things recently. I think the most important thing by far that really gets me going is those snack box openings. And watching all the yumminess that comes out of those boxes. But of course, lots of good stuff on Cage's channel. Do you have, besides Soul Link Challenge, do you have anything else coming up, Cage? Oh, your mic is off. There you go.
Sorry, I thought I had it turned back on. Nothing specific at the moment. We're going to continue our playthrough. That's me and Short and Sweet. Going to continue our playthrough of Zelda 2 next weekend, I believe is the plan. Beyond the Soul Link and Zelda 2, there is nothing official on the books. I do plan on continuing my playthrough of Dead Rising 3 with Watch Whitney at some point in the future. And I'll plug Reading in the Dark for Short and Sweet, which is a book club podcast with her, Steph Babies, Watch Whitney, and Riley and Cecilia from the Horror Struck podcast.
Yeah, the next episode for that should be coming out in early January, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, that's what they're aiming for. They have not set a date yet, but they are reading Misery from Stephen King.
Yep, and it should be available now on the video on demand. Their last episode where they did Carrie. So Carrie, and then Misery is next month. You can check that out on Short and Sweet's channel. Rage, what do you have coming up here on your schedule in the next couple of days, weeks?
Mainly just Dead by Daylight and Tribes of Midgard. Dead by Daylight on Tuesday and Thursday. Tribes of Midgard on Saturday. Okay.
Well, there you go. If any of that appeals to you, check them out. You know what to do. Hit that button and go see these fine folks on their own channels because all they do is come over here and grace me with their presence and make me look good because my ass is ugly. In any case, thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will see you all later. Let's see here. Before we do anything else, do we have any raid redemptions yet? Hold on, let me... things that I'm always missing here. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. There we go. Okay. Any raid redemptions? I didn't see any, but I might have missed it here. Let's see who else is on. Any suggestions? Let me see who we have here. Pockets on, trousers on. G-Ray finally fixed his PC instead of throwing it out the window. Do you have a preference, Cage?
I don't. I was gonna say see if Rage has anyone possibly to support within that he wants to do. My honest recommendation would be podcast is going on right now, and I know our friend Tuba Swan is on it.
Oh, Tuba and Danny Hurt. Rage, did you have anybody?
No, it doesn't look like I have anybody at the moment.
Okay. All right, we'll go see Pocket then. Cage, I got to get out of here right away. I've got an errand to run that I got to get there by 7, so I'm going to quickly shut everything down and get the hell out of here. Just tell Pocket, I appreciate him, and I'll see him at a later time for me. Let me get this going there. Okay, Rating Pocket, and thank you everybody for joining us. See you tomorrow night for The Amazing Mr. X. Don't do anything I wouldn't do because I'm not going to do that shit. Adios. Bye-bye.